On this first episode, I'm introducing you to what anything but average means. Life has been an insane journey of highs and lows and has proven to be anything but average. And I fucking love it. Kicking this off, what I want to share are the reasons why I started this podcast. I want to give you an overview of how I've managed changes in my life, and then also what it means to live a life that is anything but average. And ultimately, I want to show you that you can have it all. Little by little, you can change areas of your life to become the best version of yourself. And I'm excited to start this journey of becoming unapologetically you on this first episode.
Hey everyone. So welcome to episode 3 of Not Your Average Blonde podcast. Thank you again for joining me this week as we continue along this journey of just improving ourselves. So I'm a little late to the bandwagon, but I wanted to talk about today was the trend of 2024 ins and outs. I don't know if you saw all over social media, 2024 kicked off with a flood of everyone declaring what trends will live and die in this upcoming year. These range from things that people think will be cool this year to personal goals and aspirations that they want for themselves. And as a naturally introspective person, I absolutely loved this trend and decided to go ahead and jump on it. I'm talking about it a couple weeks later just because, I published it on my social media at the beginning of the year, but wanted to kind of think on it a little bit more throughout this month, and then figured, you know what, why not? Let's publish it and let's talk about it, because I think it goes along very well with just the growth of this podcast and the mindset of growing as an individual. And to be honest, I've never been a fan of the New Year's resolution concept. I don't believe that you need an arbitrary date just to start pursuing your goals. You can start that any day, any time of the year. And it all goes back to it being a mindset thing, which is why you're here, listening to this podcast. So one thing what I really like about with the in and out concept is it's a cool compare and contrast of reviewing who you were this last year. It kind of forced you to take a moment to think back on the year of things that you liked, that you didn't like, things that you want to improve on, things that you want to continue working on. And it can range anywhere from your growth to, I've seen people who did it for fashion statements and for trends that will be popular for the year, or trends that weren't popular, or that aren't going to be popular going into this next year. But ultimately, it's, for me, how I approached it was doing a compare and contrast of reviewing who I was last year, and then setting the vision and then the intent for what I want this upcoming year. I really like how the lists are individually unique, and it sets that energy for a personal manifestation for what you want in the upcoming year. I think it's been a pretty cool sense of self-expression that comes across your feed as you look at other people's lists and kind of get ideas, and also you get a good insight into what other people are wanting to change and then what they're working towards. So that's kind of my take on this whole in and out trend, and now so let's start diving into mine. Starting out the year, my going in theme is this phrase of going where I'm celebrated and not where I'm tolerated. I don't think the statement needs much explanation, and a lot of it came about just because of the nature of my work last year. Last year, I was pretty nomadic. I was gone for the preponderance of the year for my work in quite a few different environments. I had quite the extreme contrast of experiences of being in environments where, I was merely just tolerated. I was viewed as just being a pretty thing to objectify, or a warm body just filling a seat, to being in a completely different environment where I was valued, I was celebrated, my opinion was respected, and I was respected as well for who I was, and then also the experience that I brought to the table. It was just quite the dichotomy, an extreme change of environments, going from, a pretty toxic one, it was a very extremely toxic environment, to going to a healthy environment where I had that respect, and I was given that space and that latitude to be able to grow and develop and to be able to bring my best to work and to give my best and my all into the work that I was doing. And the last part was probably one of the most edifying like jobs that I've had so far, like in my career. But with the extreme changes of environments and both having had the impact that they did in different ways, it really shaped like how I viewed myself last year, but then also ultimately has shaped, more so like what I want for my future, what I want to build, like how I want to grow. And I like had a good mentor that, I met last year and who has become a good friend of mine, who told me that phrase of go where you are celebrated and not where you are tolerated. And I'm incredibly grateful like for that phrase and for the constant reminder that he gave me of just understanding like the self-worth and like my value that I am as an individual, and the importance of being like in those environments where you are wanted, where you are accepted, where you are celebrated. And so this phrase is what has set my tone for my mindset going into this year. It's affected how like I built my vision board and shaped a little bit more, or refined even more so like how I want my future to be, and ultimately like how I'm building each day like through deliberate action, and then my mindset for 2024. So on that note, I want to go ahead and start with diving into like what my outs for 2024 were. And my lists are kind of lengthy. I'm going to keep them the explanations kind of a bit brief, but the first one is self-doubt and shallow friendships. So much of these like came through when I was in like very toxic environments. I came in, I thought, like pretty strong, with the first environment that I was in, just really took me down like a few notches. It rocked my confidence, rocked my ability to be able to cope, and it just really took a toll like on my physical health and like my mental health especially. And one of the byproducts, from being in that type of an environment was self-doubt. Going forward, I, wanted to work through like my self-doubt. Fortunately, the latter half of 2024 gave me the opportunity to be able to heal and to be able to do a lot of that inner work to overcome some of that self-doubt and to like rebuild my confidence even more so with that. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go forward with more of these like podcasts like in the future. I really want to deep dive into like defining and overcoming self-doubt. And then also with that, friendships, especially shallow friendships, like how to recognize and how to navigate those type of like situations and people, so that way you know what to look out for and know how to navigate like through both of those situations. So more to come on future podcasts with that. And I'll dedicate like solo episodes just to those two topics. The next one on my list was respect seeking, not wanting to minimize and compromise myself to like earn the respect of others. That has been one very staunch professional rule that I have for myself, is just maintaining my standards and my own like self-respect. I saw a lot of people last year who stooped down to a level where they did disrespect themselves to try and earn the respect of others, to fit into, a toxic environment. And a lot of it came at the expense of like their own authenticity, and then also even more so, I would say, at the expense of other people that they were working with and those that they were around. It was incredibly sad to watch. And it was something that like I don't ever want to compromise on, because I don't want to be that type of a person and I don't want to do that to other people. So that was like a huge kind of another lesson learned that, I saw an experience like last year. Another one was overworking for someone else's reward. Last year really dug me like into the ground with just throwing myself into work and just working to the point where it was very, very unhealthy. And a lot of times I didn't get much benefit like out of it. The second half of the year, like I said, like my work is very edifying and I found it to be incredibly rewarding. But the first half of the year, a lot of the work was constructed to benefit like other people, for their own, like they wanted like promotions, they wanted to look good in front of other people, they wanted to earn like the praise of other people at the expense of you. And it was a very like cutthroat like environment. And I know there's quite a few of that experience, of those experiences within like other workplaces, but this one was just its own like beast of just toxicity and the expense that it took the expenses and toll that it took like on other people. And also talk about that more like in future episodes. But bottom line, an out for me is overworking for someone else's reward. The next one, the next out for 2024 for me is alcohol. For 2024, I want to work on having a healthier relationship with alcohol. I don't drink as much as I used to. I say I definitely have a much more healthier approach like with alcohol this year. But last year was it was eye-opening. Like I never had that like college experience. If you don't know, like I went to like a dry campus like in college. So I actually didn't start drinking until I think I was like 30. It was way late in my life, especially compared to my peers. But last year was the first year that like I had a brush with alcoholism and binge drinking. And it manifested as like an unhealthy coping mechanism to deal with a really toxic work environment that I was in. At the time, I didn't realize it. I just thought like, okay, like I'm going out with, coworkers and friends and we're just cutting loose. But it very, very quickly devolved into, binge drinking. And I didn't quite realize that I may have had a problem until my mom pointed it out later. And, thankfully I overcame it and I learned from it. Thinking back, it was a bit embarrassing at the time. And fortunately, my friends and coworkers gave me a lot of grace that came with that. And understanding that, it happens sometimes like in life. There's a lot of different circumstances and things that could push someone like to that point. And I had like reached that point for a little bit last year, but, was able to work through that and overcome it. Was able to forgive myself and move on. And sometimes, it happens, but that's where, you have to exercise that grace with yourself and work on being proactive to not allow that to happen again. So whether that's, setting limits for yourself or knowing like what your triggers are, managing your stress, limiting, the type of environments that you go into where there could be like pervasive alcoholism. There's tons of different approaches that you can take with navigating that beast. But for me, this year, alcohol is an out, and I want to have, like I said, a healthy relationship with it. So maybe like a glass of wine, 2 or 3 times like a month is about the extent I'll go, or having limits on myself. Like if I go out with friends to like a 2-drink rule. So the next out is fear of the unknown. It's so easy to get into your mind and allow what ifs and then fear to like consume you. And that's a very like slippery slope. It's one of those that I caution you, just don't give it the time. Don't give it the energy. Again, like I can talk more on that like in the future in another podcast, or even do like kind of a short, like a mini podcast, like on that. But it's one of those items that just, it's an out. Same thing too with this next topic, burnout. Like I said earlier, was overworking for someone else's reward. I definitely overworked, and it came at the cost of me burning out. I also want to do another podcast like on this one, just dedicating it fully to the topic of burnout. But last year, it just left me extremely burned out. And so I'm on the recovery of it. Some of the big impacts that had has been, physical. It's impacted like my sleep, my ability to have good, like restful sleep. And a couple of other items that I'll talk about later on. But fortunately, I've been very proactive with recovering from burnout and putting boundaries like in place in my life for me to be able to get into a place where, like I said, I'm on that road to recovery. The next topic that's also out is downplaying. Don't minimize yourself. You are so much more. And at the end of the day, like who cares what others think? Like let yourself shine, like let that spark like come through, and don't allow yourself to minimize at the expense of who you are. Like it's just not worth it. You're so much more. The next one is mindless consumption and just being more deliberate, like with my time and like my focus, which goes into one of my ins for the year of like building yourself. Another out that goes along with the downplaying is settling. This is another one that's just like, nothing in life is worth settling for. Like you are worth so much more. You are worth better. Like you are worthy of like having like good things. Just do not settle. Every time I've settled like in my life, like I've regretted it, and life is just way too short to live with regrets. And regrets is not something that like I want to focus on when I'm on my deathbed. Like I fully believe in living intentionally. And like I said, I learned some of those tough lessons of settling like in my 20s, especially when it comes to relationships, that there can be so many like ripple effects that comes from that. But at the end of the day, like settling, it's an out. You're worth it, and you are worth of so much more. Another out is people who lower my energy. Energy suckers, they gotta go. I don't have time to be around like that low energy vibe, especially like energy vampires. This year is a lot of the focus is on me and building me up and moving forward. And I don't have time, or nor do I want to give my precious energy to those who are going to continue to lower it. Your energy is your most powerful currency, and I want to be wise with how I'm spending that currency. The next out is perfectionism. Again, like it's impossible. Just start whatever you want to do. Like don't wait for things to be perfect, and also recognize that like, hey, like you're never going to be perfect, and that is okay. Still continue to give your best. Start that one thing and just pivot, adjust your course like as you go. Another out is being too busy. I'm really focusing on 2024 and like learning how to like slow down, enjoy life, enjoy being present, because like when you're in the present, it increases your joy. And so I want to manage my busyness level, and that also goes hand in hand too with just recovering like from burnout, being okay with not being busy all the time and just enjoying and savoring like those slow moments. Another out for 2024 is expectations of others. Another podcast on this episode for the future. I really need to like start taking notes, because I feel like there's a lot of items like on this list that I'm like, oh, like I can do a podcast on this one in future, or I have a lot I can say on this one in the future. So I'll make notes of that and continue to follow and listen for more on some of these podcast topics. But expectations of others, one of my fallacies is like I love to see the best and potential in other people, which sometimes it's a good thing. But it can also be like a catch-22 where sometimes I can build up like the potential in my head so much of like other people that it leaves me disappointed when other people don't meet that expectation. And for me, that's not a fair thing to place that expectation on other people, especially when they're not in a place in their life where they can live up to, that potential that I am envisioning like for them. And I have to recognize that that's on me. That's not on them. And I need to accept them from where they are at the moment, and then also accept that their actions are speaking louder than their words. And so that's, an item that have been working on and want to continue working on. And the last out for 2023, I think I keep saying 2024, for 2023, the out is acceptance of low effort and inconsistency. That's a hard out. Like it's not worth the time. It's not worth my energy. And this goes back to like knowing like your self-worth and like what you deserve and what you're willing to tolerate like in your life, like from others. And this could include like family, friends, relationships, whatever it may be. Like you are worthy of so much more. And if you have people that aren't going to accept you by giving you like low effort and inconsistency in your life, like take your time and your focus and your energy, love, intention, whatever it may be, and put it somewhere else. Put it somewhere else where it's going to grow and continue to build. All right, besties. And now for the ends for 2024. The first thing on my list is more sunshine. I am a sun worshiper. I absolutely love the sun, especially first thing in the morning. It's one of the best ways to wake up, open my curtains or blinds, and just let sunlight pour into my room, cleanse the energy, and feel that gentle warmth just on my skin. It makes me so happy when I can get an adequate dose of vitamin D in my life. It has been a game changer for me, and especially with like how I feel physically and mentally. I cannot recommend enough. Of course, practice safe sun skincare, but there definitely are a lot of health benefits like for it, and I highly recommend checking out the Huberman Lab podcast for more information on the benefits and the importance of getting sunlight early in the morning, especially like right when you wake up. It sets your day off for on the right step, but then also too, it plays into your sleep cycle, and he's done a lot of science and research on it. Highly recommend checking it out. I can throw the link if you would like as well for some of his like clips or podcasts talking about the importance of getting like sunshine first thing like in the morning. Next on my list is staying genuine and real. No more minimizing myself and staying true and authentically me. Not changing me for others, but maintaining genuine and realness, which I'm an Aries, so most time you're going to get the truth and pretty blunt and honest with it. Next is boundaries. That includes boundaries with friends, family, but the biggest thing is just maintaining boundaries with like work. I am a self-proclaimed workaholic. A lot of times I have a hard time enforcing those boundaries, and it tends to take over my life. And that's something that I don't want for me this year. I want to be able to enjoy life more, and I want to be able to cultivate more of a life like outside of the workplace. So boundaries is another area of focus. Number 3 on my list for ends is no. Just say no. Like, I have the right to be able to say no, and it's a word that I need to use more often. I think in society, like, there's so much pressure to be yes people, but that goes back to staying genuine and real. Like, there are some things where just say no. Like, if you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it, and you are not obligated to anyone or anything if you don't want to do it. Next on my list is Pilates. I am absolutely obsessed. It's done wonders for my mind, for my body, my soul. I love the time that it takes to give me to focus inward. It gives me that space to focus inward. It strengthens me, but it also allows me to just slow down and focus on my breathing. I really like the mental aspect of it, of just bringing me into the present, being in tune with my body, being in tune with my breath, and just focusing completely on me and being like in that moment. It's been great. I cannot rave enough about the benefits of it. I think everyone should try it at least a couple of times. There's also a lot of like physical benefits that comes with it too. Definitely worth checking out. And don't be surprised if you hear more about it like in the future. Next on my list is soft life. I know there's been a lot of discussion over what soft life is, and a lot of women are pursuing it, or that could just be what's showing up in my algorithms, like on my feeds. But there's been a lot of talk and discussion around the soft life. For me, for wanting to build more of a soft life, the 2 big items within that is just stress management and then balancing my hormones. Last year, my stress levels were through the roof. It has thrown my hormones like completely out of whack, and so I'm trying to be very like conscientious of balancing them again. I ditched the birth control for a little bit to try to see if I can work on correcting that like myself and then naturally, and one of the biggest factors with that is managing like my stress. And so I've eased back a little bit on work. I am prioritizing like my sleep schedule. I am doing like low impact workouts. I'm being very conscientious of my diet, making sure I'm getting a lot of protein in, and I'm eating like good, wholesome like foods, trying to steer clear of foods that have like extra like hormone additives. So we're talking like meats and like certain types of like dairy. Just overall, just trying to maintain more of like that soft life to get me into like a better like physical and mental space. Next item on my list is going where I'm celebrated, finding that good energy kind of vibe, and then building. So building me, building my future. Not much more to say there. And next is minimalism. A lot of people had minimalism as like an out for this year, but I honestly love it. I always have. I'm one of those people that like, I'm very sensitive to like the energy in my environment, and especially if there's a lot of like clutter literally stresses me out so much. I've watched like what's that one show? There's like some show like on TV, it's Hoarders, I think is what it's called. Hoarders, yeah, where it's people hoarding, and just even like seeing clips of that show stresses me out so much. And so I definitely prefer more of like a minimalistic like lifestyle. And then last year I was pretty nomadic. I was moving around quite a bit, and then didn't have a lot of stuff. I lived out of my suitcase for like 9-10 months of the year. And I found that like minimalism just made my life so much easier. It was less to clean. It was less to pack. It made picking out like clothing easier. So all around, like I am here for it, and I want to bring more of that like into my home, and then especially like into my wardrobe. One of my goals this year is to build a minimalist capsule wardrobe. So when I literally got back from like the holiday season a couple weeks ago, I just like gutted my entire like closet and down to pretty much almost nothing to rebuild it into that minimalist like wardrobe. And with that wardrobe is going and ties into a bit more of my femininity. So the next item on my list is embracing my femininity. Last year I had to be like in my masculine so much just due to the nature of like my work, and it can be very hard to embrace like my femininity. Oh my gosh, I cannot say that word right now. But sometimes some of the work environments that like I'm in, it tends to be more of a male dominated environment, and embracing being more feminine can be viewed as a negative, which is absolutely frustrating, but you can use it to your advantage as well too. So which ties back into my podcast title for Not Your Average Blonde. A lot of people make so many assumptions over just the color of my hair, and then also like my voice and I guess the accent that I have, which is a bit more, like I said, like on the feminine side, but I don't want to view that as something to be like shameful of. I want to embrace more of like my feminine nature, my feminine energy. I want to bring more of that like into my life, and I fully believe that, like you can be a powerhouse and still be feminine like while you're doing that as well. So after femininity, I have sleep on my list. So like another game changer like for my mental health and mood has been prioritizing my sleep. So that's practicing good sleep hygiene, not doing work in my bedroom, making sure, I have like soft lighting and my bedding is comfortable. I have like a good evening routine. Um, Sleep affects everything. It impacts so much of your life, especially if you don't have a good sleep schedule. And one of the things from last year, from having such a high stress, like work environment, and just my life just in general was just really stressful last year. It threw my sleep just completely out of whack. I was struggling a lot with, like insomnia. Still something I'm kind of working through, but it's getting a lot better since I've prioritized and have been deliberately focusing on my sleep. Another added benefit as well is like my immune system. I notice that like when I don't get enough sleep, I tend to be more prone to getting sick, and it also would take me longer to recover. And so I absolutely hate being sick because like when I get sick, it completely like takes me down, and I hate it so much. So I found through sleep, I can boost my immune system as well as, the mental health benefits too that has given me. And it just makes my life just a lot easier and like less stressful. And that's one of those elements that's within like my control is my sleep. Next on my list is friends. Being gone so much last year, like my social construct is pretty much just like non-existent getting home. I had a lot of friends who had like moved or I felt out of touch with, and a lot of my really good friends, like my best friends, I have to travel to go and see them. Like they don't live in the same city that I live in. Thankfully there's technology, but I want to be able to focus on like rebuilding like a core group of girlfriends again, like here where I live, and then also strengthen, those long distance like friendships that like I have. Next is open, honest conversations. It's kind of crazy like being here in the States because like I feel like we have lost the art of conversation. I go to like other countries, I meet like other people, and the art of conversation is definitely still there. And what I mean by that is like people in like a lot of times I've noticed like overseas, people will take that time to like slow down in their life, whether it's like going to a coffee shop with, whether it's by themselves or like with friends, but they take that time, they slow down, and they have like just very genuine like conversations. When they talk with you, they focus on like connecting with you. And I absolutely love that. Here in the States, it's a little bit harder. I feel like we're a little bit more closed off. And then especially after the pandemic, it's our social like skills have dilapidated like quite a bit. But these open, honest like conversations, like those are like the key to my heart. Like I absolutely love those deep and soulful conversations where you can really connect with like the true essence of that person or the group of people that like you're with. And it's rare, but I love them. And that's something that I want to focus on and build more of, like within like my life with those people that I have around me. Next on my list, I promise we're almost done, just have like a couple more to go, is like self-love. Like, so I don't think I need to explain like this one too much, but I want to continue to like love and be good to myself. Like I've worked very, very hard to become like the woman who I am today, and I've grown to absolutely like love her. She's pretty badass, and I love every bit of me. And it was well worth like the pain and the journey that it took to be able to get to this point. So after femininity, I have sleep on my list. So like another game changer, like for my mental health and mood, has been prioritizing my sleep. So that's practicing good sleep hygiene, not doing work in my bedroom, making sure, I have like soft lighting and my bedding is comfortable. I have like a good evening routine. Sleep affects everything. It impacts so much of your life, especially if you don't have a good sleep schedule. And one of the things from last year, from having such a high stress, like work environment, and just my life just in general was just really stressful last year. It threw my sleep just completely out of whack. I was struggling a lot with, like insomnia. Still something I'm kind of working through, but it's getting a lot better since I've prioritized and have been deliberately focusing on my sleep. Another added benefit as well is like my immune system. I notice that like when I don't get enough sleep, I tend to be more prone to getting sick, and it also would take me longer to recover. And so I absolutely hate being sick, because like when I get sick, it completely like takes me down, and I hate it so much. So I found through sleep, I can boost my immune system, as well as, the mental health benefits too that has given me. And it just makes my life just a lot easier and like less stressful. And that's one of those elements that's within like my control, is my sleep. Next on my list is friends. Being gone so much last year, like my social construct is pretty much just like non-existent getting home. I had a lot of friends who had like moved or I felt out of touch with, and a lot of my really good friends, like my best friends, I have to travel to go and see them. Like they don't live in the same city that I live in. Thankfully there's technology, but I want to be able to focus on like rebuilding like a core group of girlfriends again, like here where I live, and then also strengthen, those long distance like friendships that like I have. Next is open, honest conversations. It's kind of crazy like being here in the States, because like I feel like we have lost the art of conversation. I go to like other countries, I meet like other people, and the art of conversation is definitely still there. And what I mean by that is like people in like a lot of times I've noticed like overseas, people will take that time to like slow down in their life, whether it's like going to a coffee shop with, whether it's by themselves or like with friends, but they take that time, they slow down, and they have like just very genuine like conversations. When they talk with you, they focus on like connecting with you. And I absolutely love that. Here in the States, it's a little bit harder. I feel like we're a little bit more closed off. And then especially after the pandemic, it's our socials like skills have dilapidated like quite a bit. But these open, honest like conversations, like those are like the key to my heart. Like I absolutely love those deep and soulful conversations where you can really connect with like the true essence of that person or the group of people that like you're with. And it's rare, but I love them. And that's something that I want to focus on and build more of like within like my life with those people that I have around me. Next on my list, I promise we're almost done, just have like a couple more to go, is like self-love. Like, so I don't think I need to explain like this one too much, but I want to continue to like love and be good to myself. Like I've worked very, very hard to become like the woman who I am today, and I've grown to absolutely like love her. She's pretty badass, and I love every bit of me. And it was well worth like the pain and the journey that it took to be able to get to this point. And progressing from like self-love, that goes into practicing kind of the philosophy of like less work and more play. Like I worked so much last year. Work was my life, and it was incredibly unhealthy, and it took a toll that led to being burned out. So I'm on the road to recovery, like from burnout. It definitely still is a work in progress, but I have been noticing significant improvements from where I was. And I want to continue to focus on just like slowing down and just enjoying being present and just enjoying like the beauty that like life has to offer. So yeah. And almost to the last two items is like finances. I want to continue to have like a financial like mindset. For me, it's absolutely crucial to keep building for my future and ensuring like I have that security and for working towards like financial freedom. Ultimately, I want the goal of having like freedom of my time. That's what financial freedom like means for me. It's like freedom of my time. I want to get to the point that I want to work because I want to, not because I have to. And financial security is one of those elements that will be able to provide that. Financial security is also is very important to me as well, just like as a value. When I was with my ex, he was absolutely terrible with finances. A lot of it like fell on me just to be irresponsible. It's incredibly frustrating. Like I vowed never again. Once him and I like split up, I made that promise to myself that like I don't ever want to be in a financially disadvantageous like position again, where I have like that insecurity just constantly looming overhead. And I've worked very hard to get myself into like a comfortable position. And I want to continue to be able to provide like that security and to continue building even more like of that security. And last on the list is high standards for others as well as myself. Kind of short but sweet, but no more settling, and then cutting out like the toxic stuff and allowing the good stuff to be able to flow into my life. And it's very general, but I kind of like how like general that is because it gives me a lot of like flexibility for how I want to apply that and how I want to maintain that, and ties back into, you know, like boundaries, like what I mentioned above. So yeah, that concludes my very, very long list of what's in and out for me like in 2024. And thank you for joining me for this podcast episode and for letting me share like a little bit more like of me and my focuses for this year.